The rain poured mercilessly that night, slapping against the windows like 1,000 angry hands. I stood by the front door, clutching an old leather bag stuffed hastily with whatever I could grab in the final minutes. My hands trembled not because of the cold seeping through the thin cotton of my shirt, but because of the words my only son, Thomas, had just spat at me. "Get out of this house, old man. You're nothing but a burden now. It's my house, my rules." His voice was sharp, cruel, so unlike the little boy who used to cling to my leg and beg for bedtime stories. My chest tightened as though a fist had reached into my ribs and clutched my heart. I opened my mouth to speak, to remind him, to plead, to fight, I don't know which, but the words lodged in my throat. Beside him, his wife Lisa stood with her arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. It wasn't the first time she looked at me that way. She never liked me, made that clear from the first day she stepped into this house. My house. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this, and if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. I built this house with my bare hands. I roared, my voice breaking like a splintered tree trunk in a storm. Every brick, every nail, every plank of wood. This land was nothing but a wild field when I laid the first stone. You have no right. But Thomas didn't flinch. If anything, his face twisted into something worse than anger, indifference. "You built it. So what? That was decades ago. You're old now, Dad. Times have changed. I'm not going to let you rot in here and drag us down. Lisa's pregnant. We need this house." Pregnant. That word hit me like a crowbar to the chest. A grandchild, but instead of joy, it was used as a weapon to strip me of my dignity, my home, my life. Thomas stepped aside and pointed at the open door where the rain turned the porch into a slick, dark pool. "Go. Now." My legs buckled, but pride kept me upright. I gripped the handle of my bag tighter, staring at the house, the beams I carved, the floorboards I laid, the roof I patched with my own sweat and blood. Memories flickered like dying embers, Christmases by the fireplace, birthdays in the backyard, long nights fixing leaky pipes and cracked windows. Gone. All of it. I stepped out into the rain, feeling the cold bite into my skin like 1,000 needles. As the door slammed behind me, the finality of it nearly dropped me to my knees. And that's when I made a promise to myself. If this was how my story was going to end, I was damn well going to write the last chapter myself. But to understand how we reached this breaking point, how a father and son who once built a life together could become strangers, you need to hear the beginning. You need to know how I built this house with my bare hands and how the son I loved more than life itself turned into the man who threw me out of it. It began in the summer of 1969. I was 25 years old then, lean, stubborn, and dirt poor. Back in those days, we didn't have much, but what we lacked in money we made up for in pride and grit. I grew up in a small town called Merville where folks knew each other's birthdays, sins, and secrets. My old man was a carpenter, and though he wasn't a gentleman, he knew how to build things that lasted. I never thought much of it as a kid, resenting the long hours he made me spend in his workshop when other boys were out swimming in the river. He had big hands, rough as sandpaper, and a voice like gravel. I swore I'd never be like him. Funny how we always end up becoming the very thing we run from. At 19, I met Ellen. Sweet, freckle-faced, with hair the color of fresh wheat fields and a laugh that could stop a man in his tracks. She was everything the world wasn't: soft, warm, kind. We married quick because back then, if you loved a woman, you didn't waste time. And in the spring of 1970, she told me she was pregnant. Thomas was born on a stormy night in November, his arrival announced by lightning that split the sky in two. Holding him in my arms, I felt something I'd never known before, a terror so complete it made me promise I'd give him a better life than the one I had. But we had nothing. No house, no land, no future. It was a man named Old Joe who gave me a chance. He was a mason, nearly 70, and half-blind in one eye, but he believed in hard work. He let me apprentice under him for scraps, teaching me how to mix mortar, lay bricks, frame walls. Every night, my hands bled and my back screamed, but with each nail I drove, I felt something solid growing inside me. After a year of saving every penny, Ellen and I bought a small plot of land on the edge of town. It was nothing but rocks, weeds, and snakes, but to us it was a kingdom. The first wall went up in 72. I dug the foundation with a borrowed shovel, laid bricks in the dead of night after working 2 jobs, and built that house one blistered finger at a time. Ellen would bring Thomas, a toddler by then, to watch me work. I remember his little hand clutching mine, eyes wide, as I showed him how to hammer a nail. "This is your home, son," I told him. "And one day you'll raise your own family here." We moved in with nothing but a mattress on the floor and a table made from crates, but it was ours. The fireplace I built from river stones warmed our winters. The kitchen Ellen painted a soft blue smelled of pies and Sunday roasts. It wasn't fancy, but it was love. And it was in those years, before the world got loud and complicated, that I was happiest. But happiness is a fragile thing. Life has a way of chipping at it, slowly, until one day you realize you've built a fortress on sand. Ellen fell ill in the summer of '94. Cancer. It started as a cough and ended in a hospital bed where she slipped away, her hand in mine, while Thomas sat in the corner, stone-faced. He was 24, already working in the city, chasing bigger things. After the funeral, he barely came around. The house felt too big, too empty. I buried myself in repairs, fixing things that didn't need fixing. I built a gazebo in the yard, restored the barn, carved a rocking chair for no one. Years passed. Thomas married Lisa, a city girl with sharp eyes and sharper words. She didn't like small towns, old houses, or old men who told stories of the past. I saw the way she looked at me, like I was a cracked window she couldn't wait to replace. But Thomas, he changed too. The boy who once rode on my shoulders now barely called. When he did, it was about money, the house, things he wanted. I ignored the signs, until the night he told me Lisa was pregnant and they wanted to update the living arrangements. That's what he called it, an update. The next morning, the eviction notice was on my kitchen table. But you know what's worse than being betrayed by your own blood? Realizing you saw it coming and did nothing. And so here I am, standing in the rain, a bag in my hand, the door to my life slamming shut. But I swear to you, this isn't how my story ends. Because what Thomas doesn't know is that the house he just threw me out of holds a secret. One that can tear his perfect little world apart. And tomorrow, I'm going to use it. The rain didn't let up that night. It came down in thick, angry sheets, soaking my clothes until they clung to my skin like a second, icy hide. My bag felt heavier with each step, though there was hardly anything inside. A faded photograph of Ellen, a pair of socks, a pocket knife my father gave me, and a letter I never had the courage to open. I made my way to the old woodshed by Miller's Creek, a forgotten place where boys used to sneak smokes and steal kisses in the summers of our youth. Now it stood half-rotted and leaning like a drunk against the wind. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. I pushed the door open, the rusty hinges wailing like a wounded animal, and stepped inside. The air smelled of mold and wetwood. I dropped the bag in a corner, sat down on a pile of rags, and let the silence swallow me. For a while, I just sat there, listening to the storm rage, feeling every ache in my bones. 74 years old, kicked out of my own house, discarded like a rusted tool. I took the photograph of Ellen from my pocket, the one of her sitting on the porch, holding a newborn Thomas in her arms, both of them smiling like the world was made just for them. "I failed you, Elle," I whispered. But even as the words left my mouth, something inside me hardened. Maybe it was pride, or spite, or the last flicker of a man too damn stubborn to lie down. I wasn't going to die in that shed. Because what Thomas didn't know, what he never cared to ask, was that when I built that house, I built it with a secret. Back in '73, during a job upstate, old Joe and I were repairing a church roof when a copper strongbox came loose from the attic beams. Inside were stacks of old war bonds, deeds, and cash. The priest insisted it belonged to no one and handed it over to us. Joe took his share and drank himself blind. I took mine and hid it. Not in a bank, not in a wall safe. I buried it beneath the house in a chamber I built before laying the floor. A chamber only I knew about, sealed with bricks and mortar beneath the old fireplace. For years, I kept adding to it. Ellen knew. She thought it foolish, but she trusted me. After she passed, I left it untouched. By the time Thomas moved Lisa in, it held enough to buy half the town. And now the bastard had the nerve to throw me out. A slow grin spread across my face in the darkness. He might have taken the house, but the soul of it, the fortune buried beneath his feet, still belonged to me. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to steal it. No, I was going to destroy him with it. But before I did, I needed a place to stay and only one man I could trust. I pulled myself up, joints crackling like dry leaves, and stepped back into the rain. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the streets glazed with mud and broken branches. I made my way to Hank's workshop on the edge of town. Hank Carson had been my friend since we were kids. Fought side by side in the war, drank together, raised our boys on the same dirt roads. His workshop was a mess of sawdust and rusted tools, the sign hanging crooked over the door, Carson and Sons Woodworks, though his sons were long gone to the city. When Hank saw me standing there, soaked to the bone and carrying my bag, he didn't ask a thing. Just grunted, handed me a cup of coffee, and pointed to the chair by the stove. "Lisa finally did it, huh?" he said after a long silence. I nodded. "Thomas too?" "Yeah. Damn fool boy." Another silence. The kind that only old men who've buried wives and dreams can share. After a while, I told him everything about the eviction, the secret chamber, the money. He whistled low. "You serious?" "Serious as a heart attack." Hank set down his cup. "What's your play, Jack?" "I'm gonna take back what's mine. But not with fists. I want to hit him where it hurts." Hank leaned back, eyes narrowing. "And you need my help. Just one last thing, old friend." He smiled then, a crooked thing full of mischief. "Hell, Jack, you know I'm in." I told him the plan. It wasn't going to be easy. The house was Thomas's now, and getting inside without a scene would be impossible. Unless I used the one weakness Thomas always had. Vanity. See, Thomas was proud of that house, though he never lifted a finger to build it. He loved showing it off. The beams I carved, the stonework I laid. Every year, there was a local charity gala, and the biggest homes in Merville opened their doors to the public. The winter social was in 4 days, and Thomas had entered the house in the tour. I grinned. "For days," I said. "That's all I need." Hank laughed. A deep, rusty sound. "Damn, Jack. You sly old bastard." We spent the next 2 days gathering what we needed. Old tools, blueprints I kept from the build, the spare cellar key Thomas didn't know existed because he never cared to ask. I stayed at Hank's place, sleeping on a cot in the back room. Townfolk whispered, but no one dared say a thing to my face. In Merville, people knew better than to poke a sleeping bear. On the third night, I sat alone by the fire, Ellen's photo in my hand. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "It ends tomorrow." But even as I said it, a knot of grief twisted in my gut. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my son back. The boy who chased fireflies in the yard, who clung to my leg, who called me daddy when the thunder scared him. But that boy was gone, and the man who replaced him deserved nothing but what was coming. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that the storm we survived 4 nights ago had loosened more than shingles and branches. It had cracked the old chimney, and the secret chamber beneath the fireplace? It wasn't as sealed as I thought. As dawn broke on the day of the winter social, a sharp knock came at Hank's door. And standing there, pale as a ghost, was Lisa. "We need you, Jack," she stammered. "What happened?" I asked, cold, heart-pounding. "It's Thomas, something's wrong." She was crying. And in that moment, every plan, every grudge, every bitter thought I held fell away. Because no matter what he'd done, he was still my son. I grabbed my coat and followed her into the storm. Lisa's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles bone-white against the leather. The road was slick with the remnants of last night's rain, and the windshield wipers squealed as they fought to clear the fogged glass. I sat in the passenger seat, staring ahead in silence, the air thick with questions neither of us was ready to ask. "What happened?" I said, finally breaking the quiet. She didn't answer at first, just kept her eyes on the road, her face pale and drawn. "Lisa," I pressed, my voice low but sharp. "What happened to Thomas?" She swallowed hard. "The fireplace collapsed." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean collapsed?" "This morning, after the cleaning crew left, Thomas wanted to test the new wood he'd ordered for the gala. He lit a small fire to make sure the place smelled cozy," she said bitterly, tears brimming in her eyes. "There was this cracking noise. Then the whole damn thing gave way. Stones, wood, everything came down." I sat back, cold washing over me like a wave. "And Thomas?" She blinked, her lip quivering. He's alive. But, hurt. The EMTs said a beam caught his leg. It's bad, Jack. I didn't answer. The irony wasn't lost on me. That chimney, that fireplace, the very heart of the house, built by my own hands, now crushing the man who stole it from me. Lisa shot me a glance. I didn't want this, she whispered. I didn't want any of this. I didn't believe her. Not for a second. But this wasn't about her anymore. This was about Thomas. By the time we reached the house, half the town was gathered out front. Flashing ambulance lights bathed the white siding in bursts of red and blue. I stepped out of the car, ignoring the rain-drenched onlookers and the murmur of gossiping mouths. I pushed my way through until I saw him. Thomas lay on a stretcher, his face pale as wax, blood caking his temple, his right leg twisted unnaturally beneath a splint. A paramedic was strapping an oxygen mask to his face. Another pressing gauze to a gash on his arm. For the first time in years, he looked like a boy again. Frightened. Fragile. Mortal. Dad? He croaked, his voice rasping through the mask. I knelt beside him, every instinct in my body warring between fury and mercy. I'm here, son, I said, my voice catching. His eyes glistened with pain and something else. Regret. I didn't mean. I gripped his hand. Save your strength. We'll talk when you're patched up. The paramedics wheeled him toward the ambulance, leaving me standing in the wreckage of the house I built. The front room was a mess. Smoke-stained walls, broken beams, and in the center of it all, the collapsed fireplace. And there, beneath the rubble, something glinted. My stomach clenched. It was the edge of the old copper strongbox. The secret chamber was exposed, and half the town was standing outside. I moved fast, stepping over the debris, ignoring the shouts of an officer calling for everyone to clear the area. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached the spot and yanked the box free. It was heavier than I remembered. I tucked it under my coat and made for the back door, slipping out before anyone noticed. By the time Hank caught up with me down the alley behind the house, my hands were shaking. You got it? He asked, his voice low. I nodded, pulling open the lid. Inside, the bonds were still there, though damp and yellowed with age. The cash, though faded, was still readable. But what made my heart stop was the envelope on top. One I'd forgotten I'd placed there all those years ago. It was addressed to Thomas. In Ellen's handwriting. My throat tightened. Hank saw the look on my face and gave a low whistle. Well, hell, he murmured. Didn't see that coming. I turned the envelope over, my fingers tracing the faded ink. To my darling son, should you ever lose your way. I swallowed hard. I have to read this to him. Jack? No. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. And with that, I headed for the hospital. The hospital room was dim, the only light coming from the monitors beeping steadily beside Thomas's bed. He lay there, pale, sedated but conscious, his face a map of bruises and stitches. I sat beside him and placed the strongbox on the table. His eyes flickered toward it, then to me. What is that? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the envelope and unfolded the brittle paper. I need you to listen, son, I said, my voice thick. This is from your mother. His eyes widened, and though his lips barely moved, he whispered, Mom. I nodded. I began to read. My dearest Thomas, if you are reading this, it means life has taken you down a hard road, and for that, my heart aches. Your father loves you, though his ways may be rough. He built this house not for himself, but for you, for your children, and your children's children. Stands as proof of his love, his sweat, his sacrifice. Never forget where you come from, Thomas. Never let pride and greed blind you to what truly matters. Family, love, loyalty. If you betray those things, no house, no fortune, no title will shelter you from the storm you create. I love you, my boy, and I hope this letter finds you before it's too late. All my love, Mom. The room was silent when I finished. The only sound was the slow beep of the heart monitor. Thomas's lips trembled. I forgot, he whispered, tears streaking down his battered face. I placed the letter in his hand and leaned closer. I didn't care about the house, Thomas, I said. I cared about you. He sobbed then, a sound so raw it gutted me. Years of anger, bitterness, and grief poured out of him in one broken, trembling breath. I'm sorry, Dad. I was wrong. About everything. I squeezed his shoulder. I know, son. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, we sat there. Father and son, both bruised, both broken, but finally speaking the same language. Forgiveness. But outside that hospital room, another storm was brewing. Because while I sat at Thomas's bedside, the town was talking. And what they were saying would change everything. When I stepped out of the hospital that evening, the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and honeysuckle. The sky was a bruised shade of purple, the last stubborn traces of daylight clinging to the edges. Merville was a small town, a place where news traveled faster than wildfire, where folks didn't need a newspaper to find out what happened. By now, everyone knew about Thomas, about the collapse, and about me. I walked down Main Street, past Dawson's Diner, past the hardware store where I'd bought the very nails that held that house together. People turned as I passed. Some gave a curt nod. Others looked away. A few crossed the street. Hank met me at the corner by Mill Lane, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "You stirred up a hornet's nest," he said, his eyes flicking toward the gathering crowd by the town square. I frowned. "What now?" He jerked his head toward the post office bulletin board. A thick cluster of people huddled around it, whispering, eyes wide. We made our way through the crowd until we could see it. There, pinned to the board, was an old photograph, black and white, edges curled with age. It was of me, younger, covered in sweat and dust, standing beside the half-built house. And beneath it, scrawled in bold, red paint, "He built it. They betrayed him." The town had chosen a side. And for the first time in years, it was mine. I turned to Hank, who gave me a crooked grin. "Guess you're still the old lion after all." But it wasn't just sympathy that filled the air. It was outrage. People had known Thomas to be proud, selfish even. But throwing your own father out of the house he built? That was a line even this town's gossipmongers couldn't defend. "Damn fool forgot this place remembers," Hank muttered. Suddenly a voice called out, "Jack." I turned. It was Abigail Monroe, a sharp-tongued woman who ran the bakery and didn't much care for me or anyone else unless it involved fresh bread and town scandals. She approached, wringing her hands. I heard about Thomas. We all did. The boy was foolish, Jack. You didn't deserve what he did. None of it." I said nothing. Another voice chimed in. Then another. Soon a dozen people stood around me, offering apologies, awkward attempts at amends. I should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was tired. I didn't need their pity now. Not when the damage was already done. What mattered was fixing what I could. Starting with my son. The next morning, I returned to the hospital early. Thomas was awake, his face pale but clearer than I'd seen it in years. The nurse stepped out quietly when I entered. "I was hoping you'd come," Thomas murmured, his voice rough. I sat down, placing the strongbox on the table between us. "You forgot this," I said. He looked at it, shame darkening his eyes. "I was a fool, Dad. I thought if I took everything, made it mine, it'd fill the hole she left when Mom died. I thought if I ran it my way, it wouldn't hurt so bad." His voice broke. "I blamed you," he confessed, staring at his splinted leg. "Blamed you for not saving her." I swallowed hard. "Thomas, I would have given my life for your mother. You think I don't carry that every damn day?" Tears slid down his face. "I see that now." He reached out, tentative, as if expecting me to pull away. I didn't. "I don't know if you can forgive me." "I already did," I said. And I meant it. We sat in silence for a long time, just two broken men fumbling toward whatever scraps of family we had left. But the world outside wasn't ready to let it lie. By afternoon, the phone calls started. First from the mayor's office, offering apologies, asking if I'd consider attending the winter social after all, as a guest of honor. Then reporters from the city paper sniffing for a story. They wanted to run headlines. "Betrayed father reclaims legacy. House of lies collapses." I turned them all down. I didn't build that house for fame. I built it for love, even if it nearly destroyed me. But the biggest call came that evening. Lisa. I hadn't spoken to her since the accident. When I answered, her voice was small, almost unrecognizable. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry, Jack." I said nothing. I pushed him. I made him believe the money, the house, all of it mattered more than you. I was scared. Afraid we'd never be enough. Afraid we'd lose everything. A long pause. And I lost us anyway. I let out a weary sigh. Lisa, you loved that house more than the man who built it. You poisoned him against me. I know, she whispered. I'll leave if that's what you want. And there it was, the easy road. I could have told her to get the hell out. Could have burned what was left of her in Thomas's heart. But something inside me cracked. Because no matter what, she was the mother of my grandchildren. She was once the girl who smiled nervously the first time she visited my house, carrying a peach pie and calling me Mr. Carter. I couldn't erase that. I don't want you gone, Lisa, I said quietly. I just want you to remember this house was never about bricks or wood. It was about us. About family. She sniffled, and for the first time in years I believed her tears were real. I'll make it right, Jack, she promised. I hope so, I said. For all our sakes. That night, back at Hank's place, we shared a drink by the fire. The storm had passed for good this time. The air smelled clean, and somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. So what now? Hank asked. I thought about it. I could take the strongbox, leave town, start over somewhere nobody knew my name. I could hand it over to Thomas, let him use it to rebuild his life, his marriage, maybe even his soul. Or I could do what Ellen would have wanted. I made my decision as the last log cracked in the hearth. I'm going home, Hank, I said. He raised his glass. About damn time. But just as I settled in for the night, an unexpected knock came at the door. And standing there, suitcase in hand, was someone I hadn't seen in 15 years. My grandson, Matthew. And the look on his face told me that while one storm had passed, another was on its way. For a long, heart-stopping moment, neither of us spoke. Matthew stood there in the doorway, suitcase scuffed and hands shoved deep in the pockets of his jacket. He looked older than the boy I remembered, but not by much, his face worn, eyes hollow in a way I recognized too well. The kind of emptiness life carves into a man when he's lost more than he can admit. Grandpa, he murmured. I set my glass down, heart hammering in my chest. I hadn't heard that word in over 15 years. Not since the night Thomas threw me out of my own house and Matthew, no older than 16, chose to stay behind. I remember his face then, angry, ashamed, too proud to meet my eyes. And now here he was. The prodigal grandson. I didn't know where else to go, he said, voice cracking. Hank glanced at me, then back at Matthew. Well, I'll be damned. Come inside, I said quietly. He stepped over the threshold, shoulders sagging like a man carrying too much weight. The old screen door creaked shut behind him, the sound slicing through the silence like a blade. I gestured for him to sit, and he dropped into the chair by the fire like a broken thing. I could see it written in every line of his face. Life hadn't been kind to the boy. Want to tell me what's going on? I asked, my voice careful. He stared into the fire. I made mistakes, Grandpa. Big ones. And I paid for them. I waited. He cleared his throat, blinking fast. Dad, he told me not to come back. Said if I ever showed up in Merville again, he'd have me arrested. A sharp pang struck deep in my chest. What happened, Matthew? I took money, he confessed, voice a hoarse whisper. From him. From the business. I was deep in debt. Gambling, mostly. Thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. I sighed, the weight of it settling over me. I lost everything, Grandpa. The house, my car, hell, even my name. Been sleeping in my truck the past 2 months. He finally turned his face to me, and I saw it plain as day, desperation. The raw, soul-crushing kind. I didn't come here for a handout, he added quickly. I just needed to see you. I rubbed my hand over my face, emotions battering me from every side. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the years lost, he was still my blood. Ellen's grandson. Matthew, I said, my voice low and thick, this family's made a mess of things. Your father and me. And now you. He dropped his head, ashamed. But you're still family. His head shot up, eyes wide, hope flickering behind the regret. Come morning, I said, we're going back to that house. All of us. You, me, your father. We're going to end this. One way or another. Hank let out a slow whistle. About damn time. Matthew swallowed hard. Thank you, Grandpa. I gave a weary nod. Don't thank me yet, boy. There's a reckoning coming. The next day broke clean and cool, the sky clear for the first time in weeks. We arrived at the hospital early. Thomas was awake, propped up in bed, face still bruised but color returning to his cheeks. His eyes widened when he saw Matthew step through the door. For a moment I thought he'd shout, "Throw him out." But something in Thomas softened. The years of anger, grief, loss, maybe it was the letter, or maybe it was facing his own mortality. Whatever it was, the bitterness seemed to slip from his face like a mask being lifted. "Matthew," he rasped. "Dad," Matthew said quietly. A long pause stretched between them. Then Thomas gestured weakly. "Come here, son." Matthew crossed the room and knelt by the bed, his head bowed. "I'm sorry, Dad. I was a fool." Thomas gave a hoarse laugh. "Guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree." They both chuckled, then Thomas's eyes found mine. "Dad, I want to go home. All of us." I met his gaze, feeling Ellen's presence between us. "We will, son," I promised. By noon, we stood together on the front lawn of the house I built. The town had gathered, word spread fast in Merville. There were whispers, murmurs, faces peeking from windows. But we ignored them. Lisa stood by the porch, her face pale but determined. "I spoke to the town council," she said. "They want to help rebuild the fireplace. The right way." "The way you did, Jack." I nodded. "Good." Matthew stepped forward. "And the rest of the house, it's yours again, Grandpa. Papers are already being drawn up. Dad signed them this morning." Thomas gave a weak smile. "I was too blind for too long, old man. I forgot what mattered." I looked at the house, its walls weathered, windows cracked, the memory of Ellen hanging in every brick and beam. "I didn't build this house for me," I said to them all. "I built it for family. For laughter and love, for Christmas mornings and Sunday dinners." And somewhere along the way we lost that. A hush fell over the crowd. But not anymore. I turned to Matthew. "You got a lot of fixing to do, boy." "I know, Grandpa," he said, voice thick. And then to Thomas. "And you, son, it's gonna take more than a few signatures to mend what you broke." "I'll do whatever it takes," Thomas said, tears shining in his eyes. I took a deep breath. "Then let's start." The townsfolk clapped. Hank whistled. Even Abigail Monroe wiped a tear from her sharp old eyes. We spent the day clearing debris, setting new beams, cleaning soot-stained walls. Neighbors brought tools and sandwiches. The town that once turned its back now lifting us up. By sunset, the house wasn't whole, but it was healing. And so were we. Later that night, as the last of the workers left and the house stood quiet, I sat alone by the old oak tree out back. The moon hung fat and silver, and the air smelled like fresh timber. I pulled the strongbox onto my lap. Inside, Ellen's letter lay folded atop the bonds. I read it one last time, her words sinking deeper now than they ever had before. Then I buried the box beneath the tree's roots, marking the spot with a simple stone. Some things weren't meant to be owned. They were meant to be guarded. As I rose, a soft voice spoke behind me. "You coming in, Grandpa?" It was Matthew, leaning against the porch post. I smiled. "Yeah, kid," I said, voice steady. "I'm home." But even as I walked toward him, toward the light of that battered house, I knew one truth remained. We might rebuild the walls, repaint the siding, mend the broken hearts. But the past, the hurt, the betrayal would always leave scars. And in the end, those scars were part of the house too. The morning after we began fixing the house, I woke up to the scent of coffee brewing in the kitchen, strong, dark, just the way Ellen used to make it. For a moment, as my eyes fluttered open in the unfamiliar bedroom Hank had offered me, I could have sworn I was 25 again, with Ellen humming a hymn at the stove and sunlight spilling across the floorboards of our brand new home. But time's cruel like that. It lets you forget for a split second, only to rip you back. I swung my legs out of bed, my old bones aching, but there was a new kind of warmth in my chest. I followed the smell to the kitchen and found Matthew standing there, a steaming mug in his hand, watching the sunrise through the window. He looked like his father did at that age. Stubborn jaw, thick dark hair, same restless eyes. "You made coffee," I said. He smiled, sheepish. "Figured I owed you a few cups at least." I took the mug from him and leaned against the counter, watching the sky turn orange and pink. The house creaked around us, old bones of timber remembering their purpose. "We're gonna finish it today," he said quietly. I nodded. It wasn't about the house anymore, it was about us. Before long, Hank arrived with a toolbox in one hand and 2 sandwiches wrapped in brown paper in the other. Thomas came too, his limp noticeable but his pride swallowed. Even Lisa showed up, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, determination in her face. And to my surprise, half the damn town trailed in behind them. Old Mrs. Winslow, the sheriff's boy, even Abigail Monroe, with a basket of biscuits and a reluctant grin. It wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was penance. We got to work. Replacing beams, patching walls, sanding floors. Laughter replaced old silences. Hammers and saws sang the rhythm of forgiveness. Around midday, as I was fitting a new frame for the fireplace mantel, Thomas came to stand beside me. "I remember the first night we spent here," he said, voice distant. "I must have been 5. You carried me upstairs, told me this house was built to keep us safe." I glanced at him, the weight of years pressing between us. "I meant it, son. I know that now," he murmured. "I spent so long trying to be bigger than you, trying to prove I could fill your shoes. But I see now. I was trying to replace you." I set down the hammer and turned to face him. "You don't have to fill my shoes, Thomas. Just find a pair that fits your own damn feet." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "I'm sorry, Dad." And for the first time in a long, long while, I believed him. We finished the fireplace by sundown. It wasn't perfect, the stone was rougher, the grout uneven in places, but it stood solid, proud, like the house itself. I hung Ellen's old photograph above it, the one of her sitting in that wicker chair on the porch, a book in her lap, sunlight catching her hair. The house finally felt like ours again. Later that evening, the town gathered for supper on the lawn. Fried chicken, sweet tea, pies in every flavor you could imagine. Kids chasing fireflies, old men swapping war stories. It felt like Merville again, the town Ellen had loved. I sat in a rocking chair by the porch, the warmth of the gathering settling over me like a well-worn quilt. Matthew sat on the steps, his arm around a girl I didn't know, shy thing with bright eyes who looked at him like he was the only man left in the world. Hank clinked a glass with a spoon. "To Jack Carter," he bellowed. "The man who built this house with his bare hands and finally took it back." The crowd cheered, and for the first time since Ellen died, I let the joy settle deep in my bones. As the laughter faded and night wrapped itself around us, Lisa approached me holding a small envelope. "I had these drawn up this morning," she said. "Inside were the new deeds. The house was officially mine again. Clean title." I know it doesn't fix everything," she said, her voice small. "But it's a start." I took a breath, stared down at the papers, then at her. "It's enough," I said. Because it was. Not because I needed the house, but because we finally remembered what it meant. Family. Not the blood that betrayed you, but the ones who showed up when the roof caved in. The ones who picked up hammers and patched the walls. The ones who stayed. I slid the papers back into the envelope. "We'll build this together now," I told her. "The right way." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheek. That night, as the house emptied and the last embers of the fire pit glowed red, I sat alone on the porch. The air was thick with crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. Matthew came out, 2 beers in hand. "Mind if I sit, Grandpa?" I smiled. "Not at all, kid." We sipped our beers in silence for a while. "I was wrong about a lot of things," he said eventually. "So was I admitted." He laughed softly. "Never thought you'd say that. I'm old, not dead." We shared a quiet laugh. "Think we'll be okay?" he asked. I looked out at the house, its fresh boards and old scars side by side. "I think we're better than okay." I glanced at him. "You're not running again, are you?" He shook his head. "Not this time." Good, I thought. Because this family didn't need another ghost. We stayed like that for a long time, the night thick and endless around us. And when I finally went inside the house I built with my bare hands, the house my son kicked me out of, the house we fought to reclaim, it felt like coming home. Scars and all. The fireplace flickered soft against the walls. Ellen's picture smiled down. I whispered to the empty room, "We're home, darlin'." And for the first time in decades, I believed it.